Right, hello and welcome back. It's your boy Hank Hackerson with Hank Hacks Hackers, and we are continuing along the path of our PenTest Plus and the very next step in our Nmap education, which is the basic port scanning. In the last video, we did live host discovery. And so the basic port scanning room is available only to subscribers. So the last one was free. It's available to everybody. This one requires a subscription. Subscription is 12 bucks. If you use the link in the description below, you'll get a $5 credit towards it. So it makes it even more affordable for you. Otherwise, you can try to do this on your own machine, on your own computer, and just following along in these videos. And just make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time a video comes out in this pathway. And you'll just learn more and more and more when it comes down to Nmap, which is a very useful tool. And it's kind of one of those foundational tools when it comes down to penetration testing and scanning and enumeration, all of that good stuff. So that being said, we are going to jump into the introduction of our room today. And so in the last video, we did the first three steps right here. So we did the enumerate targets, live hosts, and reverse DNS lookup. And very, very easy to do, very quick to do. And so today we're going to be talking about port scanning, and I think what else are we doing? We're doing TCP ports, the flags, and TCP scans, so on and so forth. So I think maybe we're going to be doing numbers 4 and 5 today, and then 6 and 7 and 8, all that stuff we're going to probably do a little bit sprinkled in this one and in the next video. So it's kind of the introduction for this particular room, and it's a part of this overall pathway. I've done the first 3 of these right here, which is live host, which was the last video. Today we're doing basic ports. The next one we're going to do advanced ports. And then this one I haven't done at all before, so this one we're going to end up doing together as I do the recording. So it'll be nice. These 3 are reviews for me, but this is going to be like a live learning session for me as well. So that is it for the intro. I do believe that we need to launch some machines, so I'm just going to get started on this one right now. And my attack box is already up, so let's make sure that's still running and it's all good. And it is, and these are the results from our live host room. So we're going to clear those results and should be good here on. So let's talk about TCP and UDP ports. So in the same sense that IP addresses specify a host on a network, a TCP or UDP port is used to identify a network service running on that host. A server provides the network service, and it adheres to a specific network protocol. Examples would be providing time, responding to DNS queries, serving web pages. A portal is usually linked to a port is usually linked to a service using that specific number, port number. For instance, HTTP is port 80, HTTPS is 443, and it could be either SSL or TLS that provides that security. And so TCP ports 80 and 443 are default for HTTP and TPS, whatever. The web server administration might choose other port numbers if necessary, just to kind of make it a little bit harder for hackers to try to find these things. And no more than one service can listen on any port, which is very important to understand, at least on that one IP address. So if you have a different IP address, obviously same port could be used, but on the same IP, only one service can be applied to that specific port number. At the risk of oversimplification, we can do open port and closed port as the 2 classifications for ports, but there could be filtered, and so this is kind of the more nuanced classification. So you have an open port, it's listening on the specified port. Closed port, there's no service listening on that port, although the port is accessible. By accessible, we mean that it is reachable, it's just not, and is not blocked by a firewall or anything like that. Filtered means that it's most likely behind a firewall. So Nmap can't determine if the port is open or closed because it's not accessible. This state usually due to a firewall preventing Nmap from reaching the port. Packets can be blocked from reaching the port. Alternatively, the responses are blocked from reaching Nmap. So Unfiltered means that Nmap can't determine if it's open or closed, although it's accessible, and the state is encountered when using an ACK scan, an acknowledged scan, which is SA right here. And then you have open filtered and closed filtered. So Nmap can't determine whether the port is open or if it's filtered, and Nmap can't decide whether or not the port is closed or filtered. So UDP port 53 belongs to DNS, and this is another one of those default things. So 53 is DNS, 22 is SSH. How many port states does Nmap consider? And we have them right here. So these are the 6 different states that it considers. And which port state is the most interesting to discover as a pen tester? And of course, it's the open port, because that means that it's listening, it's open, it's accessible, and we could probably run the rest of our exercises through it. So that's the basics around TCP and UDP ports. And so now we're going to look at some of the TCP and UDP flags. This one was a little bit hard for me to wrap my head around originally, but the more I studied it, it kind of became a little bit easier to understand. So the first thing that we need to understand is the difference between a bit and a byte. So we need to understand that the first 24 bytes of a TCP segment are the TCP header. The following figure shows the header defined as the RFC 793 defines it. This figure looks sophisticated, however, it's pretty simple to understand. So in the first row, we have the source TCP port number, which is this thing right here, and it gets 16 bytes, right? And then you have the destination port number, which gets another 16 bytes, totaling for 32 in total. And we can see that the port number allocated, or excuse me, 16 bits, my apologies. So 16 bits. See, this is the part where I mess up because I have a little bit of dyslexia. So 16 bits is the source port, and then 16 bits is the destination port, making for a total of 32 bits, right? So in the second and third rows, we have the sequence number and the acknowledgement number. Each row has 32 bits dedicated to it, so sequence and acknowledgement, and then which with 6 rows total, making up for 24 bytes. And so when you understand that across this right here is 32 bits, then what you understand here is that, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is 6 bits, and each one of them, so the ACK bit or the reset bit, these things can be set when you're setting a flag, right? So most of these we're not going to be talking about right now, but we are going to be talking about this specific piece right here, because these are flags that we're going to be setting as we do our scans. So in particular, we need to focus on the flags, and we have highlighted the TCP flags in red. Setting a flag means setting its value to 1, meaning 1 bit. So from left to right, the TCP header flags are, so urge for urgent, its urgent pointer filed is significant. The urgent pointer indicates that the incoming data is urgent, and that a TCP segment with the urge flag is set is processed immediately without consideration of having to wait on any other TCP segments. So if it's urgent, it gets processed without having to wait. The ACK or acknowledgement flag indicates that acknowledgement number is significant, and it's used to acknowledge the recipient of a TCP segment. PSH is the push flag, asking TCP to pass the data to the application promptly. So it almost seems like it's the urgent flag, and it could be, like they both could be set, which makes it super urgent kind of a thing. Reset is the reset flag, used to reset the connection. Another device such as a firewall might send it to tear a TCP connection down. This flag is also used when the data is sent to a host and there is no service on the receiving end to answer. And then there's the SYN flag. So synchronize is used to initiate a TCP handshake, which we talked about in the last video, and synchronize sequence numbers with the other host. The sequence number should be set randomly during a TCP connection establishment. And then you have the FIN flag, which has no more data to send. Finish, basically, no more data to send. So this is it, right? So you have the urge, acknowledge, push, reset, SYN, and FIN. So What three letters represent the reset flag? We already talked about it. Which flag needs to be set to initiate a connection, which is the first part of a three-way handshake, and that would be SYN. And then SYN/ACK would be the second part of a three-way handshake, and then the third part is just ACK. So synchronize, acknowledge, and then acknowledge. That's how it kind of breaks down for a TCP handshake. And that's basically it. That's what we need to understand about these flags and the fact that they take up 1 bit each. So if you have that specific flag value set to 1, that means it's active. If it's set to 0, that means it's not active. Or if it's blank, it means it's not active. So that's kind of a big thing that you need to understand about this. So now we have already started our machine right here, and we're going to try to do a TCP Connect Scan, which does a full TCP three-way handshake. So when you do a Connect Scan, which is ST, there we go, it's right here, it does this full handshake. So it does the SYN, send to the receiving end, the receiving end responds with SYN/ACK, and then you send back the acknowledge. And so the case with this would be that the port itself is open. So if this has been completed, that means the port is open, and the port responds with, yep, I'm open and ready to go. So it completes the three-way handshake. In standard TCP connection, the client sends the TCP packets, so that's us, with the SYN flag sent, and then the server responds with SYN acknowledge, and then finally we send back the acknowledge. We're interested in learning whether the port is open, not establishing a connection. Hence, the connection is torn as soon as its state is confirmed by sending the reset acknowledge. And you can choose to run TCP Connect using this. So these two will go together. So the acknowledge and the RST acknowledge will go together, or one after another. And the response is that the thing is open. You probably heard the little engine running in the background, and that pisses me off so much because people go down my street with their loud ass cars or their loud ass bikes, and you can just tell that the person is trying to compensate for something, because why the hell would you go down a small street going that fast with that loud of a car, and then now I have to wait because your stupid engine or your stupid muffler set off the alarms on these cars, and now I gotta wait for the alarms to be turned off. It's one of the most annoying freaking things ever, honestly. And every single time that it happens, it just makes me want to go punch somebody. But I know how to manage my anger. So thankfully, I don't do it. But I really do get annoyed, man. It just pisses me off so much. Okay, moving on. So it's important to note that if you are not a privileged user, which means root or sudo or admin, a TCP Connect is the only possible thing that you can do to open TCP ports. In the following Wireshark packet, you see that Nmap is sending TCP packets with a SYN flag set to various ports, and by default, Nmap will attempt to connect to the 1,000 most common ports unless you specify otherwise. A closed port responds with a SYN pack, responds to a SYN pack with the reset acknowledged to indicate that it's not open. This pattern will repeat for all the closed ports as we attempt to get the three-way handshake. So source IP goes to the destination IP, and it's going from these ports to these ports. It's sending the SYN flag first, and then if the destination IP responds, so here we go, destination IP has responded to the source from 443, sending reset acknowledge, meaning stop trying to connect to me, and same thing from port 256. But then if it responds back from port 143 with a SYN acknowledge, that means this thing is open, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of see the pattern, and then you'll see that it's color coded, right? So this thing, if it responds as red because the port is closed, it's going to show up on Wireshark as one of those events that needs to be addressed, which is like, why is this person trying to connect to us? Why is this person trying to connect to a port that's closed or filtered? And we need to look at this a little bit further. So this is important to understand. The color coding of Wireshark is one of those things that makes it, like, honestly, one of the best tools ever. And it's another free tool, which is, it's great. I mean, for penetration testing and security analysis and all these things, there's a lot of great free tools. So you can get a lot done with these things. So So we notice that port 143 is open. So right here, it says it right here, port 143 responded with SYN acknowledge. So it replied with that, and then we were able to complete the three-way handshake by sending an acknowledge packet to it. And then the figure shows that all packets exchanged between Nmap, host, and the target 143. The first three packets are the TCP three-way handshake. And so here we got this one where it actually just shows the full conversation. So IP address, this thing, and TCP port 443. So this is the destination that we wanted to reach and the port that we actually got a complete response from. And so now it shows the full conversation. So it went from this port to 143 SYN, then that responded with SYN acknowledge, then we responded back with acknowledge, and then finally we also responded with reset acknowledge to close that connection. So to illustrate, we are going to run the following command and get a detailed list of our open ports. So we're going to do nmap inside this thing right here, and st for connect scan, and 237.72, that is our IP address, and voila, we got these responses, and that was super quick too. So these are the open ports that we got. So 22, which is SSH, 25 is SMTP, you got HTTP, of course 443 is closed because it's HTTP secured. You have POP3, which is for mail, RPC bind, and IMAP, right? So these are the ports that are currently open. And so we can use those for further analysis and enumeration. So it says, note that we can use -F, capital F, to enable fast mode and decrease the number of scan ports. Why is this going so? Okay, we go. Scan ports from 1000 to 100. So instead of doing the top 1000, I'll do the top 100 most common ports. And it's worth mentioning that the R option, so lowercase r, can also be added to scan the ports in consecutive order instead of random. And this option is useful when testing when ports open in a consistent manner, for instance, when a target boots up. So launch the VM, do nmap this right here via the terminal, which we already just did. A new service has been installed on this VM since our last scan, which port number was closed in the scan above. So if we look at the one that they did over here, these are the ports that were actually available. And so we have these, 5 ports. And then so obviously 110 is not in this list right here. So the answer was port 110 that has been open. And so what's Nmap's guess about the newly installed service? And of course it says POP3 as the potential service that could be on that map, or on that port, excuse me. So now we're going to do the SYN scan. And so I wonder if I have to terminate this other machine. I'm just going to do it anyway because it has a new machine button right here. And so that one's been terminated. We're going to start this one and we're going to read through this real quick. And so the unprivileged users are limited to Connect Scan. However, if you're a sudo, you can do a SYN scan, and it requires a root privilege or sudo privilege. So SYN does not need to complete the three-way handshake. Instead, it tears down the connection once it receives a response from the server. Because we didn't establish a TCP connection, this decreases the chance of the scan being logged, right? We talked about this in the last video. We can select this type by using SS, so lowercase s, uppercase s, and it'll get the SYN scan sent out. And the figure below shows what that looks like. So we send a SYN packet, it responds with SYN acknowledge, and then we immediately send a reset instead of sending an acknowledge packet. And so on Wireshark, that's what it looks like over here, right? So all of these are SYN packets that are sent out, and the response right here for the ones that are closed are reset acknowledge, reset, right? And then you have one that says SYN acknowledge right here, which is port 25. And then we have another one that says SYN acknowledge, which is port 80. And so those are the ones that are open. And so we should see another one that goes from our, I think this is the full conversation right here. So there we go. We can just see it right here. So you see that it sent the SYN. This one said SYN acknowledge, and this one said acknowledge, and it sent the reset. And so this is a full TCP on port 80. But we wanted to see the one where we actually do the reset first, right? So where is that? Does that show it here? yeah, this is it right here. There you go. So this is it right here. So the port that responds with, okay, I'm open, we reply back immediately with a reset right there. There it is. And then, so this is another one that responded with open. So SYN acknowledge I'm open, and we immediately replied it with a reset, right? So instead of sending the full acknowledge, reset, acknowledge, we just sent a reset. But that kind of showed up under red as well. So it might be less likely to get reported or logged, but it's not impossible to get it logged. So to see the difference, we looked at the screenshot as well, and we can see a full scan, which is this one, and any TCP port will require the full handshake. In the lower half of the following figure, you can see that the SYN scan, oh, there you go. If I would have just scrolled down, we would have seen what that looks like, right? So this is the full one, and this is the partial one. So this is the full TCP connection, and then this is just a partial SYN connection. And so all to the same port, right? Port 80, and then SYN, so acknowledge, acknowledge, then reset. SYN, acknowledge, reset, right? So there you go. Now, TCP SYN Scan is the default scan mode when running with sudo, which is this thing right here. So this is the big difference between the last command that we ran. So we're going to run that now. And then let's see what we get. And we got to get the new IP address that shows up right here. And so that one should give us a different set of results, right? So if we do sudo nmap ss and then type in the thing right here, voila. And let's see what we get. So we get, do we get different results? We got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is new, and 6667 is the port number that's open, that was added, and this is the question that it asks us. So what is the new open port? 6667, and IRC is the potential service that could be running on that port. When it says Nmap's guess, it's pretty good guess. You know what I mean? It's not that it's like a guess that is not likely that it's going to happen. It's a pretty good guess that Nmap is making that that's the service that's running on that port. So we did that, and now we're going to terminate this one, and we're going to move into the next one for UDP Scan. And so we're going to start that while we read this. So UDP is a connectionless protocol, and hence it does not require any handshake. We cannot guarantee that a service listening on a UDP port will respond. However, if a UDP packet is sent to a closed port, the port unreachable error type 3 code 3 is returned. Then you can select UDP from SU, lowercase s, capital U. Moreover, you can combine it with another TCP scan. So you can add this and have multiple scans going on. And this is what basically what it looks like. It just sends one thing over, right? And so in this particular case, the port is open, no response is expected. In this particular case, because there was a response that came back, most likely it's closed, right? So that's why it would respond. If it's not closed, it won't respond. If it's closed, it'll respond. And however, as shown in the figure, we can get a packet 3, destination unreachable, code 3, port unreachable. In other words, the ports that don't generate any response are the ones that Nmap will stay as open. So in the Wireshark capture, we can see that every closed port will generate a packet destination unreachable, port unreachable. And this is what it looks like right here. So these are all the source IP, destination IP, UDP, and this is what we're trying to reach, all these different ports right here. And now the ones that are unreachable just respond with destination unreachable. But if they are reachable, they don't respond typically. So launching a UDP scan is as simple as doing sudo nmap su capital U 10.10.82.182, and then so we have 2 ports that are open here. So let's see if we get any extra ports that are open since the last time that we ran this. Let me make sure I actually did this right. 10.10.82.182, and that's the IP, right? 10.10.82.182. Okay. So all right, so let's see what shows up here. Okay, so basically what I had to do, first and foremost, I needed to end the recording because it was taking a really long time. But I just noticed that I was doing this command right here. when in fact I was supposed to do this one right here, and the -F makes it a fast scan, and it was taking a very long time when I was doing the previous version. So I'm going to retry this with the fast version, and let's see. Yeah, and the -V also makes it verbose, meaning that it gives you kind of a status update as it starts to work. And as you can see, it kind of tells you what it's doing and what it isn't doing. And immediately we just see that there's an open port 53 that was not available in this previous section right here. So that's definitely going to be the answer that we have down here. And as we know, 53 is for the domain name service. So the service name when Nmap finishes is not going to be DNS. More often than not, it doesn't say it like that. And I'm just going to let it finish so we can actually see what happens at the very end. But the service name, based on just the answer that we have here, is going to be domain. And then, you know, that's essentially it. That's going to be it for this one. So I'm going to just let that finish. So actually we have that as a final answer over there. And then we're going to do the fine-tuning scope performance task, just to kind of read through this portion so you can have this information as well. So as we've established already, you can specify which ports you want to scan instead of the default 1,000 ports. Should be intuitive by now. It should be something that you have kind of gotten under your belt. And port list separated by commas means that just these ports that you want to be scanned. When you do a port range from 1 to 1023, will scan port 1 as well as every port in between 1023 as well as port 1023, right? So it includes everything, while port P20 to 25 will scan everything between 20 and 5 inclusive to those things. So you can specify any range that you want, or you can specify any list of ports that you want. And then you could just do scan of all 65,000 ports by doing -P-, and this is going to take a long time, just so you know. That usually takes about an hour to do, unless I guess you do -F to make it a little bit faster. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. If you do -F, it's just going to do the 100 most common ports. So it's definitely not going to do everything. And then if you do top ports 10, we'll do the top 10 ports. You can do top ports 100, top ports 1,000, and I'll do the top 100 or 1,000 ports. And then you can control the timing of the scan using the T flag or the T command, attribute, parameter, whatever you want to call it, and -T, and then you do a, these things are, I just call them the less than and greater than symbols. -T0 is the slowest period, the slowest paranoid period, which basically means, the reason why they call it paranoid is that it's implying that we don't want to get caught. So it's going to be the slowest scan. So there's going to be a long delay between each scan, while T5 will be the fastest. And you kind of don't care. You really aren't paranoid at all. You're the opposite of paranoid, essentially. There are 6 templates that you can use in this particular case. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and paranoid, sneaky, polite, normal, aggressive, and insane. So just based on what it says here, if you don't designate anything, it's going to do a normal scan, and then you can kind of work your way downward, or you can become more and more aggressive. And so to avoid IDS, so intrusion defense systems, to avoid those alerts, you want to consider 0 or 1. So scans 1 port at a time and waits 5 minutes between sending each probe. And you can guess how long that will take to scan 1 target. So if you do the top 10 ports, it'll be 50 minutes. If you do the top 100 ports, it'll be 500 minutes. If you do 65,000 ports, multiply that by 5, and that's the answer that you'll get. So it's going to be a long time depending on how many ports you want to scan. So if you don't specify anything, it's going to go to normal, which is T3, and T5 is the most aggressive in terms of speed. However, this can affect the accuracy of the scan due to the increased likelihood of packet loss, and of course it's going to show up more frequently, or more likely to show up. T4 is often used during CTFs and when learning to scan on practice targets, where T1 is often used during real engagements where stealth is more important. Alternatively, you can choose to control the packet rate using the minimum rate number and the max rate number. For example, max rate 10 or max rate equals 10 ensures that your scanner is not sending more than 10 packets per second. Moreover, you can control probing parallelization using minimum parallelism and maximum parallelism. Nmap probes the target to discover which hosts are live and which ports are open. Probing parallelization specifies the number of such probes that can be run in parallel, so basically at the same time. So minimum parallelism 512 pushes Nmap to maintain at least 512 probes in parallel, and they're related to host discovery and open ports. So it can send multiple probes instead of one probe, right? And that's something that is also pretty useful to understand. So what's the option to scan all TCP ports between 5000 and 5500? And as we established, -P, first port, hyphen, second series of ports, and this is a series of ports that you can do. How can you ensure that it's going to run at least 64 probes in parallel? You would do minimum parallelism equals 64. What option would you do to make it super slow and paranoid, which would be T0, so the timing is going to be 0, which is paranoid as fuck. And so that is the fine-tuning and scope performance, and that's basically the last task. And yeah, we have completed our scan right here, as we can see. So we have these 3 ports open, and the service name is not DNS, it's actually domain, which is obviously what it's going to be like. And 68 is open, 111 is open, and those were the ports that were already open inside this sample scan that it gave us over here. So now we just have the extra one, which was port 53, which is the domain. And something to keep in mind right here is that it also has a state of open filtered for port 68, which means that it can't tell whether or not it's open or filtered, right? But it's kind of guessing for us. And that's it for the Nmap Basic Port Scan room. And this is just our summary for the room. So I'm going to kind of minimize this and give you a little bit more to look at over here. So these are the types of scans that we covered in this specific room, which is our TCP Connect SYN Scan and UDP Scan. And they have relative to their name. So ST for TCP, SS for SYN, and SU for UDP. And then you have the port options as well. So if you wanted to do all ports, it would be -P-. If you want to do between 1,000, or excuse me, between 1 and 1023, or any other range of lists, that's what you would do, or range of ports, excuse me, that's what you would do. -F is to make it the most, so -F for fast, that's kind of how I remember it, and it does the most common ports, the 100 most common ports. -R, the lowercase r, scans ports in a consecutive order instead of a random order. T allows you to make the timing anywhere from 0 to 5, and 0 being the most paranoid and 5 being the most aggressive. And max rate 50, so 50 packets per second maximum, so either 50 or less basically. Minimum rate 15 will make it 15 or more packets per second, and minimum parallelism of 100 means at least 100 parallel probes going out at the same time. And that's basically it. That's kind of the gist of this room that we've covered, and the gist of the basic port scan room for Nmap. So hopefully you learned a lot. This was not a free room, so you would need to do this either through the subscription that you got for TryHackMe, or you just do it on your own machine using Nmap downloaded on your own machine. Nmap doesn't come as pre-installed on most machines, so you do have to install it. But if you want to just do it on a controlled environment and scan a port or scan a machine, for as an example, because this gave us 3 different machines to scan, right? So it gave us 3 different virtual machines that we could use as our victim machines. And so that's what I really like about TryHackMe specifically, is the fact that it gives you victim machines as well as the attack box. More often than not, you can go to Linode or a place like that and get yourself a Kali Linux machine to use these things, but victims are a little bit hard to find especially when you're trying to learn and you don't work at a place that allows you to do it, or you don't have permission to scan somebody's machine. So it's just easier to do it in a controlled environment like TryHackMe. So definitely go ahead and get yourself a paid subscription if you don't already have one. If you use the link in the description below, you'll get $5 credit towards your subscription. And you know, it's already cheap, so it was 12 bucks to start, so you can get $7 to start basically. And then they also have their referral program that once you have your membership, you can also get other people to get credits, and then for that they also give you a credit as well. So that's about that, and make sure you like, subscribe, share, and of course turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out in this pathway. And our next video is going to be, of course, the Nmap Advanced Port Scans. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, and I hope you learned. I hope you had a good time, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, love, and chicken grease.